First of all, welcome to our class, Rabbi Rav Fischer of Young Israel of Orange County, and I hope you will subscribe if you have not already to our channel, and you will like it, give it a like, and send it to other people so they can also like it. Enough of that. Very quick review of what we did last week. This week, we're going to look more closely at the commentaries. Avshalom had killed Amnon for raping and humiliating and basically destroying the life of Tamar, Avshalom's sister, through a common mother. And he's on the run because word comes back to him that David, his father, wants to kill him now, to have him executed for killing his son, for killing David's son, who also was the sort of crown prince. Since today's news, all this stuff about Trump meeting the crown prince. Crown prince means you're the prince who's first in line for the crown. If there are 8 sons to a king, they're all princes, but the crown prince is the one who's en route. He's the one who gets to be the king. Only Amnon's not going to be any king. He's dead. David wants to execute Avshalom, and Avshalom fled to Geshur, the country on the other side of the Jordan where his mother comes from. He's the son of Ma'achah, a non-Jewish woman whom David met in battle and took first as an Eshet Yafat Toar, under the halacha in the Torah of what happens if a Jewish soldier finds a beautiful non-Jewish woman in battle. A little bit like the story of like I don't know, Miss Saigon, or that sort. There are several stories like that of the American who goes to war in Asia and ends up taking a woman and seems en route to marrying her and has a baby with her. And it takes different forms going back to, there are about 3 of them that are coming to mind right now. So this is real, where Ma'achah is a non-Jewish woman, and David took her under Jewish law. One single time, we learned all those laws, don't want to repeat them now at the expense of your time. So Tamar was born to Ma'achah in the first coupling between David and Ma'achah, and then Avshalom. So Avshalom felt a sort of safety if he would be in Geshur. That's a country that would protect him because the king of Geshur is actually his grandfather, father of his mother. And David was contemplating invading Geshur, which would bring the armies of Israel at war against Geshur. And Yoav, David's commander-in-chief, his chief of staff of the military, saw everything's going to be almost up. That on the one hand, David is all in Abitsaris, that he's going crazy. He's going to have to kill his son. He doesn't want to kill his son, but he figures he's a Goel Hadam. He's a pursuer of the blood. He has an obligation, he feels, as an immediate relative of someone who wrongly was killed, to avenge the death. We learned last week that it wasn't as simple as arresting Avshalom and putting him on trial because of the technicality that Avshalom had not been warned with 2 kosher witnesses, according to the way a warning has to be done. So he could not simply be executed by a court. And therefore, the only justice would require a Goel Hadam, a pursuer of the blood, redeemer of the blood. So Yoav, the chief of staff, sees this is just a mess. David feels he's an obligation to go and kill Avshalom. Also, he feels an obligation to kill his son, and he feels an obligation, therefore, to go to war with Geshur, and we're not really at war with Geshur, and he's going to be fighting his in-laws. And Yoav wants to stop this. He's trying to be creative. But he also knows you can't take to David. You just can't talk David out of it. So he does what we've seen in the past, sets up a parable. He finds someone to go to David and present David with a story, a parable. He finds a woman from the city of Tekoa he tells the woman, here's what you should say. And she goes to the palace. I guess every day David held court, and people would line up to talk to the king, make requests, and she has been coached what to say. She's to go and describe how she's got a husband with two sons. The husband is dead, so she's a widow. The two sons found themselves in a fight in an open field. They both tried to kill each other, and one succeeded. So she's a widow. Her husband's dead. One of her two sons is dead. She's got only one son left. And members of the family feel that they ought go alei hadam. They feel that it now has become incumbent upon them to go and kill the one who killed the other, avenge the blood of the deceased brother according to law, because the killer brother, there's no other justice. He cannot be executed by trial, because before killing his brother, he was not given a warning. There were not two proper witnesses. A warning was not given the proper way. Rather, a fight broke out. Fight just broke out between the two of them. So you've got Go'elei Hadam, redeemers of the blood. And she goes to King David and says, I'm asking for a royal pardon for the surviving brother, my son, sort of the equivalent of an American presidential pardon. And we talked about that a little last week. When a president hands down a pardon, that's it, never happened. The crime is extinguished. It never happened. It's taken off the records. It's not only pardoned and forgiven, it never happened. We distinguished last week between a pardon and a commutation. So she's asking for a royal pardon, which would legally, not only technically, but under the law, would save and spare the living son any problem with the Go'elei Hadam, the redeemers of the blood, because suddenly under Jewish law it would be forbidden for anybody to kill that living boy. On what grounds are you trying to kill him? Because he killed his brother? That was pardoned. It never happened. So what gives you the right to kill him otherwise? Anyone who would kill a person who is not liable to be killed by a Goel Hadam is committing murder and himself faces death penalty. So she's asking David for the pardon. She gets David to agree, pretty much. And David is going to pardon. Now she's going to explain, well, this really never happened. It's a parable. It's a parable. Your son Avshalom is like my supposed son who killed his brother. Your son Avshalom, he killed without warning, without receiving an halachic warning. So he's not liable for execution. So you have no business trying to kill him in terms of imposing judicial execution. And you just conveyed, you get it. There should be a pardon for this particular, let's call it accidental killing. It wasn't accidental, but it has the legal equivalence of an accidental killing because there was no witness. Just as Avshalom killed Amnon, there were no halachic witnesses. If you'll tell me, but Tamar saw it. First of all, she didn't see it. Happened at the sheep shearing party festival. And the other brothers did not see it. They ran, and we talked about that. Even if they had seen it and they had warned him, which they had no idea in the world that was going to happen, they are not kosher witnesses for a thing like that because relatives cannot be witnesses. We explained, for example, when I conduct a wedding, not only I, but any rabbi anybody conducts a wedding. You need two kosher witnesses on the ketubah. You need kosher witnesses of the ring at the chuppah. You need kosher witnesses for the yichud room. You need kosher witnesses for when he puts the veil, all of that. The bedekin, and kosher witnesses are two men aged 13 or over bar mitzvah age, men who are shomer Shabbos, they keep the mitzvahs and are not related either to the party or to each other. So anyway, there were no kosher witnesses. Avshalom did not get witnesses. It's not a death eligible murder. Rather, at most, it's a Goel Hadam situation. And she says through the parable, I showed you, and you agreed that this should not be a Goel Hadam situation. Rather, it should be a matter of a pardon. And David steps back and sees how the parable applies, and he's no longer going to try to kill Avshalom. He's going to give Avshalom a pardon. Avshalom now can come back from Geshur and live. And the thinking is, just like that lady still will have her one son, David will have his Avshalom. And Avshalom comes back, and on the other hand, does not submit himself to public limelight, but he keeps himself in hiding. He feels safe to come back from Geshur, moves into the palace, but he stays in his room, stays in his cabin for the entire cruise. He doesn't go outside, stays out of sight. And as it all ends and we ended class, David looks at the lady as she's leaving, very satisfied with herself, undoubtedly, that she pulled it off, her assignment. And David says that Yoav put you up to it, which is surprising that he would perceive that it would be Yoav who brought it up. This week, we're going to go deeper into the Mefarshim. It is my style sometimes to go pasuk by pasuk, verse by verse, learning it instantly with the Mefarshim, the commentaries. And sometimes, for any of a number of reasons, I feel that the better way to teach it would be to tell you the entire story and then go into the commentaries. Now, why go into the commentaries if we have the story? I go into the commentaries because there's always so much more in the text than meets the eye, and it gives us a deeper feel. It's very different from people who simply, let's say, which is a beautiful thing. I know certain Christians who have told me that they make it like on the weekend. They like to have the family sit together after dinner, like on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and not necessarily a Friday night. They don't do Shabbos. But I have some Christian encounters, friends, who tell me that they like to have, like, on a weekend night, they get the whole family sits around the fire, a nice fireplace fire, and the husband and the wife and the kids, and they do a Bible reading. And they tell me, Rabbi, we're a very devout family, Christian family, and we're raising the kids to love the Bible. And every Friday night, Saturday, we sit everyone down and I read a chapter of the Bible. And it's so very, very beautiful. And I sincerely compliment them. But I think to myself, it would be so cool if they actually knew that they're missing 80% of the story. And it takes the Mefarshim, who are not in the text, to really flesh out the story. As we learned with David and Bathsheba, so much more than on the surface. There was that story of why David drove all the blind people out of the city of Jerusalem. And we learned about those statues that had been built by the Yevusim, the Jebusites. And we learned a lot of that, how they had a statue that represented blindness and a statue that represented dumbness, the sense of not being able to talk. And we've learned so much more. So we're going to go into that text now. As I said before, thanks for being here. And I'm going to try not to, if I've taught you a whole story, I'm going to try not to then use 2 or 3 weeks in a row to plumb through the commentaries. Try to do all the commentaries in one shot so we can go on with more text in the next. It's so interesting, Shmuel Bet. It's just so much interesting stuff in Shmuel, in Samuel, 2 Samuel, and 1 Samuel. First, we're going to look at a reminder of the lineup of the top sons. We had already learned in 2 Samuel chapter 3 about the sons that were born to King David. In Hebron, he had Bechoro, his firstborn, Amnon. That's what made Amnon the crown prince. He's first in line. Born to Achinoam, the Jezreelite. We learned Jezreel is up north, and we learned all about her. This first beautiful woman he took, even though he already was married at the time to Michal, the daughter of King Saul. And at that time, we had a fascinating discussion that we're not going to have again, but Janet had opened up with some questions about how could he do that. And he's married to me. It was a very interesting conversation. And, well, we talked about it, and he ends up with Amnon. And now Amnon is dead. Interesting. Who's next? Mishnehu. So Bechor, firstborn, is first in line, crown prince. Mishnehu comes from the word Sheni. And the second in line is Yoav. And we don't really hear about him, do we? His name never comes up, but he's the new crown prince. And none of us ever hears about him. He was born to Abigail. She was this beautiful, beautiful woman who was married to this real runt of a guy who was in the Carmel, not too far from the Jezreel Valley, who was celebrating his sheep shearing event. And he was a real lowlife and didn't want to give David. And you remember that story, won't take out time. She saved her husband's life by bringing food and drink to David and his men before David came and killed them. But inadvertently, she killed him anyway, because when that lowlife heard, when she told the lowlife that, I want you to know, hubby, that I saved your life by giving David food and drink, he died of a stroke. All right. And then the third in line is Avshalom. So crown prince, no more. Yoav is the new crown prince. And Avshalom basically gets Meghan Markle. He's the next one in line. He's the son of Ma'acha, who is the daughter of his grandfather, Talmai, the king of Geshur, Melch Geshur. And then there are others like Adoniah, he's going to come up much, much later in the story. And then Shvatya, he doesn't really come up much. Yitraam doesn't come out much. Okay. And we continue. Where is Geshur? So let's take a look at the map of ancient, early historical Israel. Remember, the Jews are indigenous to this land. During this period, there's no such thing as Muslims. Muslims begin in 600. It's like 1,000 plus years later. That's when Muhammad comes out. But until there's no Muslims, Arabs, whatever they are, they're wandering, they're nothing. They're not even organized as Arabs. This is our land. We never gave up the claim to the land. We were driven out, but we always stayed. Jews always remained in the land. When the Romans expelled us, when the Babylonians expelled us, Jews remained. King Cyrus allowed us to come back after conquering Babylonia. So King Cyrus overruled Nebuchadnezzar and told the Jews, you can come back and you can rebuild your temple. We started rebuilding, but then we were stopped. King Cyrus changed his mind under pressure from the Samaritans. The Samaritans were the non-Jews who had been sent to repopulate Samaria when the Assyrians. The reason I do this, by the way, this segue, is that we've learned all of this. So I want to keep it fresh in your mind. I would not take time out of the class now to go into the entire history of how Assyria exiled the 10 tribes, and I wouldn't start with that now, or Nebuchadnezzar. But we have learned that multiple times. The problem is they are forgettable if we haven't learned them earlier. So sometimes I throw that in. Anyway, so the land of Israel, Jews were always indigenous. And then when the Romans expelled us, many ended up going to Yavne with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and continued. So we always were in the land, never gave it up. The Arabs came in much, much later by conquest because they were colonialists, imperialists, conquerors, exactly what they call us. They have no right to the land, and they will never see that land again. Judea, Samaria will never, from the river, Jordan River, to the sea, Mediterranean Sea. Those days are over. Those days went on for about 40 years. There was a thought since 1967, and certainly since 1993, that there's going to be a split of this land, and they're going to get half, so-called West Bank. Like you're living over here, and they call that the bank of the Jordan River. Absurd. But that's never going to happen. 80%, October 7 changed Jewish history. It's so crazy. Yahya Sinwar and all of them, the plan was by invading over here and over here from Gaza, the yellow is Gaza, that they were going to change Jewish history and get a country here and a country there. And instead what they did was they took a country made up 50% saying you'll never get a country, and 50% saying we're glad to give you a country, a two-state solution. What he managed to do is he took the 50% who were going to give him the country, and they turned. They won't give him the country. They're still crazy leftists, but they want to live to be leftists. And they learned from October 7 that leftists who work with them get massacred, raped, children put into ovens. So now they are against, they who live in Tel Aviv and who live in all these, they don't want Arabs there either. As a country, they can live in the country, but no sovereignty. Okay. So David HaMelech is fighting. And in those days, that's Lebanon. It was known as Phoenicia. Phoenicia, famous city of Tyre. The northernmost part of Eretz Israel was called the tribe of Dan. And it's actually an expression, even in modern Israel, when somebody wants to say, like, let's say in America, I was going to say, like, I love this country. How does the song go? From California to the New York Island or mainland. I love this country. From California to New York. In Israel, Mini Dan va'ad Beersheva. Mini, which is a poetic way of saying min, from. Dan, from Dan until Beersheva. I love Israel. Mini Dan va'ad Beersheva. I traveled Israel. Mini Dan va'ad Beersheva. Darn it, they're going to increase taxes. Mini Dan va'ad Beersheva. You would think there's one competent politician that we could elect prime minister. Mini Dan va'ad Beersheva. That's how they talk. That's an expression. So the north is done. And here's Geshur, near the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Lake of Kinneret. That's Geshur. So Avshalom, so David took the daughter, Ma'acha, daughter of Talmai, had a baby with her, converted her to Judaism, brought her as his wife, and she gave him Avshalom, and now he flees to grandpa. So we're at the commentaries now. We start with the Malbim. But the Chal David. So what happened was, the text tells us that David was pursuing and to kill him. But Avshalom barach vayelech Geshur. Avshalom fled, and he went to the country of Geshur, and he was there 3 years. By Sham Shalosh Shanim. So Malbim wants to know, why was there only 3 years? If you're in exile to save your life, why only 3 years? The other class we were talking about Snowden. Beth reminded me the name Snowden. He was the guy that gave away the secrets, and he went flee into Russia under Putin to save himself. And why did he leave after 3 years? Vatachal David HaMelech l'tzeit Avshalom. The text tells us in the last pasuk of chapter 13, spending our time now mostly on 14, that David stopped pursuing Avshalom. Ki nicham al Amnon kimet. He finally made his terms. He finally came to terms that killing Avshalom is not going to bring Amnon back. Kimet, because he's dead. And so, not that David pardoned him exactly, but the word got back to Avshalom, Dad is no longer trying to kill me. Vatachal. And by the way, Tachal, we say on Shabbat when we recite Kiddush, Vayachulu hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzva'am. And the Shemayim, the heavens, and the Aretz, the earth, and all their host, Vayachulu, and it came to an end. And creation, the creating of everything, culminating with the heavens and earth, came to an end. Vayachulu hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzva'am, and God came to an end. So that's the word Vatachal. We don't see it often, but it's a biblical way of saying, and it came to an end. Vatachal David, sheshalosh shanim rishonim, shehitabel David al beno, ratzah David, tamid latzet el Avshalom. Let me make it bigger for you. It's big enough for me, but maybe we'll do it bigger for you. It's too big. Okay, that should do it. So he stopped. He stopped pursuing him. Let's just get that back. That, okay. Okay, Malbim on 30, here we go. Okay. So David wanted to kill him. Latzeit, to go out, El Avshalom, to Absalom. Ratzalomar latzet la milchama. In other words, he wanted to go to war. Ulekachtomi Geshur, for the purpose of taking him, Lokeach, from the country of Geshur, Ulehinakemi menu, and to get Nakama, to get revenge. Va'atawadanayan now, Ma'acha Ishto Otamar, someone talked David out of it. And Malbim is guessing. I'm not sure. It was probably either Ma'acha, his wife, namely Avshalom's mother, or Tamar, Avshalom's blood sister. They must have talked him out of it. Otherwise, Malbim is saying, I don't know why he stopped. That's my guess, says Malbim. Kolta David, Patachalpo, etc., etc., Mletset al Avshalom, la Shivolamit, Olahamito. So David no longer was trying to kill him. Ya'an Ra'ata, Ki Nicham al Amnon. They saw that David was cooling off and coming to terms with Amnon dead. So either Ma'acha or Sister Tamar talked him out of it. Motza'ah Chayil, Eshet Chayil, Mi'imtza. Word Chayil either means a soldier, Chayalim, Chayal Boded, a lonesome soldier, a lone soldier, someone who makes Aliyah without the rest of the family and joins Sahal as a Chayal Boded, a lone soldier. Chayal also means just courage. Motza'ah, courage. She found Tamar or Ma'acha the courage, Limnoa et David Miler Dafo Od, to stop David from further pursuing him. So Yoav goes now to find a woman from Tekoa. We don't often hear of Tekoa. Tekoa is a place in the Israeli map, in the land of Israel. There is one famous biblical personage who comes from Tekoa, the prophet Amos. We don't know a lot about Amos, but if you hear of someone named Amos, obviously in the 50s they had Amos and Andy, it's a whole different thing. But where did the name Amos come from? Amos came from Amos, a biblical prophet, one of the Nevi'im. There are the greater Nevi'im who have big books like 30 chapters, 50 chapters and so on. And then there are the smaller, less consequential Nevi'im, less consequential because there are fewer chapters in their book. For example, the book of Jonah has only 3 chapters. He's obviously very consequential. We all know about Jonah and the whale, and we read the entire book of Jonah, all 3 chapters, on Yom Kippur at Mincha. So we begin Mincha. Amos is another one like that. And I mention it briefly because Divrei Amos asher haya benok Tekoa. And therefore, there's a Jewish, we don't use the word Jewish settle. We don't use the word West Bank or settlement. We use the words Judea, Samaria, and community. There's a Jewish community, what our enemies would call a West Bank settlement, called Tekoa. And it's located exactly there. And my first wife and I, back in the 1990s or 80s, no, earlier, 70s, in the late 1970s, 50 years ago, my first wife and I were members of a Garin, a group of Americans who were going to make Aliyah, and the rest of the group made it. A few of us ended up not going for various reasons. And they were going to reestablish the long 2,000-year abandoned community of Tekoa. And our group, we began by asking the people who started the thing, we joined the group, and for various reasons it did not resonate for us. But we asked them, why Tekoa? And of course the answer could be, why not? But why Tekoa? And we were told because Tekoa is an important city in the Bible, and it's outrageous that Jews have not resettled it and rebuilt a community. I mean, it's not a place for Arabs to be sovereign. And the response is, what's so special about Tekoa? The prophet Amos is from Tekoa. Words of Amos, a sheep breeder from Tekoa. Very important to learn. If we learn nothing else tonight, that's important to know. Tekoa is located. Here's Yerushalayim. Here's Tekoa. It's not in the middle of nowhere. Holy smokes. Some people want to call Tekoa a West Bank settlement. Rabbi, you're calling it a Judea community. It doesn't look like any more West Bank or than Jerusalem. Well, welcome to reality. The Arabs call Yerushalayim a West Bank settlement. Israel, in fact, took the eastern part of Yerushalayim in 1967. It was part of the so-called West Bank. It's in Judea. Tekoa, as geographically Jewish and Israeli as is Jerusalem. It's just a little bit south. Absolutely. And Bethel, which is a Jewish community in Samaria, they call that, the anti-Semites call that a West Bank settlement, whereas we call it a Jewish community in Samaria. So looky there. You've got Bethel. That's not on the West Bank. There's the sea. There's the river. They call it the way. It's an absurd name. Here's the bank. You ever been to a beach? If you're from New York, I don't know, Jones Beach, Coney Island. If you're here in California, a lot of beaches. That's a bank. That's a bank. A bank is not 40-minute drive away. Anyway, there's Tekoa. So from Yerushalayim, where the capital is, Yoav, who is based in Yerushalayim, that's part of why I'm going through all this, goes a bit of a distance to Tekoa. Why doesn't he pull a woman from Jerusalem to go to the capital and tell David the parable? So part of it is there's a better chance someone will recognize the lady if Yoav pulls her from Jerusalem. See, there's a lot of backstory in the Tanakh that's not in the pasuk. He's got to strategize and got to find a woman that won't be recognized because she's going to tell a story that's not true about two sons that are in the field and one kills the other, and he's a widow. And what happens if she goes there and someone sees her at the palace and says, "Oh, that's Shani. I don't know what her name is. Oh, that's Shani. Hi, Shani. I don't know you. Sure you do. You were at Shabbos. We had you over for Shabbos lunch last week. How's your husband and your four boys?" So Yoav had to get somebody that no one would recognize. So he schlepped. Nowadays, by car, you can get there in, 20 minutes? He had to schlep to Tekoa, but on the other hand, he did not go to Beersheba or Gilgal. But that's what's going on here. She pulls away, but still, why Tekoa? So we're going to take a look at the Radak. Why Tekoa? And again, like if you ever saw the movie Wag the Tail, when he says, like, why Bulgaria? Why not? Amru Rabbeinu Zichronam Levracha. This is what our rabbis of our sages of blessed memory said. Ma'ishna Tekoa. Why did he go to Tekoa? Rabbi Yonatan mitoch sheregilin b'shemen. The reason he went to Tekoa is because they have a lot of olive oil in Tekoa. Olive oil? What's olive oil got to do with anything? I mean, if he's trying to find Popeye or Brutus or Pluto, we understand. But what does he want olive oil? Chachma Metsuya Bahem. Since the place is rich in olive oil, Tekoa was famously rich in smart people. Whoa. In other words, there's a connection between olive oil and a smart brain. That's what Radak says. And that's what our Rabbeinu Zichronam Levracha say. That city was completely large amount of shemen zayit, olive oil. V'chein amru, Tekoa alpha l'shemen. Tekoa had a nickname. You know how cities or states have nicknames in the United States? This is the Sunshine State, and this is the Golden State, and this is the Empire State, and this is the Windy City, and this is the Lone Star State. Tekoa was known as Alpha L'Shemen, the Aleph, like the first letter in the alphabet, the Aleph of oil. Reish Lamed Ratzal Omar, in other words, Ha'ir HaMeshubachat B'Shemen Be'eretz Yisrael, the city that was most blessed with olive oil in all of Israel, Hayata Tekoa. Was Tekoa lefichach koreota apel shemen. Therefore, it was known as the olive of olive oil. The olive of olive oil. What like Kimosha ha'aleph rosh la'otiot. Just like aleph is the first letter in the alphabet. Like the A, of like Los Angeles, like San Francisco, the A of homelessness, or Chicago, the A of crime. So it was the A of olive oil. And this I'm not going to go into because I disagree. We'll go into another time, like if we do. Okay. Continuing, Malbim says the same thing. He says, first of all, like he's also trying to deal with this question of all the places, why does Yoav have to schlep out to Tekoa to get a lady to do the right parable the right way? So Malbim saying, Radak is saying because of the olive oil. The people there are smarter. And Malbim says, Tekoa was just like all kinds of great stuff. Like in the United States today, where historically, major cities are like New York and Los Angeles. They're getting out of the politics now. Atlanta, the capital of the South. Chicago is the capital of the Midwest in its day. And again, New York. So Tekoa was special. It was in the hills. It wasn't on flat land, but so it was like a city on a hill. That's a big thing. That's like when Reagan quotes, I don't know if it's St. Aquinas or the other one, but it talks about the city on a hill. And so what's the thing about being a city? What's wrong with being a city on a plain? Well, a city on a hill, if you're saying it's a spiritual center, so it is symbolically something, a place you look up to. Again, like I say, in college, we have to read St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas. And I remember Reagan later on would often refer to hoping to make like America that city on a hill. Tekoa was a city on a hill. And that's an important thing in spiritual terms. In fact, the rabbis tell us one of the reasons God chose Jerusalem as the place to place his presence is that Jerusalem is a city on a hill. If you've ever been to Jerusalem, you know that it's like San Francisco in sense of lots of, it's not flat, it's lots of hills. You don't have like Lombardy Street, but there's hills. If you've ever been to Jerusalem, it's just constant walking up both ways. Somehow, whether you're coming or going, you're always walking up. And Tekoa, so what? Ufa Tekoa Taka Ushofer. First of all, Malbim is adding Tekoa got its name because it had great shofar blowers there. You know, Tekoa, Tokea shofar. So first of all, it was known as Tekoa, the land of shofar blowing. Va'anashim hahariyim heim bateva giborim. And people who live in the hills, by nature, are stronger. If you follow baseball or football or other stuff, or just know stuff, Denver, Colorado is up in the hills. It's got a higher elevation than most American cities, and it is known, therefore, that the air quality, the air is thinner. And therefore, if you have healthy lungs, but you've never been to Denver, and you go up to Denver, and you have a daily morning run, for some reason, when you go out of the hotel and you do your daily morning run, you come back and say, I don't know what happened to me, but I almost collapsed. I don't know what happened. I couldn't breathe. And they know in baseball and in football, when they're going to have their games in Denver to play, let's say, the Rockies, the Colorado, this or that, or the other, to have to prepare for a day or two in advance so that they're fully adjusted for the thin air. What that does is it creates stronger lungs. It really does. When the players from Denver go to other cities, they actually have stronger lungs. During that period, eventually they become regular when they leave Denver. So Tekoa, they blew shofar, high in the hills, they were strong v'chachamim, and they were smart, v'amitzei leiv, and they were brave, And our sages of blessed memory add, it's because they had a lot of olive oil. That brought out all the brilliance. So listen, everybody wants to be smart. I mean, don't you? And therefore, what's the deal with that? So let's file that in our minds for a moment. We'll come right back to that. And so he went and he told her, and Yoav told her, start crying right away. Even if you have nothing to cry about, start forcing yourself to cry. Just get in your mind something that's got you very sad and start crying. Like that acting method where you start getting it into your head. All those different ways to really cry persuasively. And I need you to really cry your eyes out. Speed, v'lobosh bigdei avel. I need you to start crying, he told the lady. And mourning, get into the mindset. And start wearing mourner's clothes. Uvalta soch, and don't wash yourself. Uve'er hatam shetatchil ba'avelut techef. And explains why you need to immediately start crying. And get into crying. When you'll show up in front of David in the palace, you will appear as though you're a woman who has been mourning for her husband and her dead son for weeks and weeks, months and months. That you should change your look. Okay. So back to the olive oil. The tribe of Asher was promised fat, F-A-T, fat. And the rabbis tell us he was promised olive trees, that in the different 12 sections of Israel, one for each tribe, that they were promised. Asher was promised olive oil. This is from Genesis 49, Devarim, Perek Memtet. Yaakov Avinu, our father Jacob, on his deathbed, doling out the land to each of the tribes, and he promises this tribe this, and that tribe that. And just give one famous example, Lo Yasur Shevet Mihuda. The scepter shall not depart from David. That was Ad Kiyavo Shiloh, till Mashiach comes. That's where that came from. Yaakov on his deathbed saying that all kings of Israel will come from the tribe of Yehuda. And sure enough, David is from Yehuda, Shlomo, Solomon from Yehuda, etc., etc. They all were from Yehuda. On what grounds? Because that was the promise, the prophetic promise of Yaakov. The only exception was the very first king, Saul. He was the tribe of Benjamin. We've talked about that. Why that one outlier? Number one, to bring Benjamin back into the nation of Israel, because Benjamin had sinned gravely in the situation of the Pilegesh Megivah, the concubine from Givah, and the way that played out at the end of the book of Judges, although historically it happened at the beginning of the book of Judges, the other tribes almost exterminated the tribe of Benjamin from the Jewish people. So God, to symbolically show that indeed Benjamin is readmitted to the Jewish people. We learned about that also when we were learning about why the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, is such a happy time in the calendar. It's when the tribe of Benjamin was brought back into the Jewish people, and people could marry, the girls and boys of Benjamin could marry back into the Jewish people, the girls of Benjamin. So in the same way that Yehuda was given its promise, Asher Shmeina Lachmo, Asher's bread, this is Yaakov prophetically and poetically. On his deathbed, Asher's bread shall be rich. He shall yield royal dainties. And that's literally like delicious cakes and cookies and jelly donuts for Hanukkah. Asher Shmeina, from Shamein. Shamein means fat. There are two kinds of fat, Shamein and Chalev. Chalev is the forbidden fat we're not allowed to eat. The suet part of the animal that the butcher has to traber and cut away. The Torah says it's karet, it's extinction from the world to come. Anyone who eats suet, the forbidden chalev, not to be confused with milk, chalav, and shamein is fat. It's the good fat, like in pastrami and in steaks and whatever, that you have to cut aside to get rid of the saturated calories. Okay, so Asher's bread will be rich. May Asher shmein alachmo, lechem is bread, shamein, and they will bring ma'adanim for a king. Of course, they'll have the fat, they'll have the olive oil. Doesn't say olive oil. The commentators say olive oil. And then at the very end of the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, just before dying, before he alights Mount Nebo to be buried by God at the top of Mount Nebo, he one last time blesses tribe by tribe the entire Jewish people. And in giving the tribe by tribe blessings, it's Asher's time. And of Asher, Moshe said, most blessed of sons be Asher. Baruch mibanim Asher. Most Baruch, blessed of all the banim. Why are they so blessed? May he be the favorite of his brothers. Yehi Ritzu Yachav, that is Achim, his brothers should rotzeh him, should want him. May he dip his foot in oil. So that might not sound delightful in everyday life. You know, if you got to dip your foot in oil, you normally want to have a towel nearby. But that's this poetic. V'tovel b'shem and raglo, may he be blessed with so much olive oil within his territorial boundaries that it's actually coming up to their feet. So what's the deal with olive oil? Let's look at artificial intelligence. This is a Torah class like no other Torah class. Let's take a look. Olive oil. Let's make it a little bit bigger so you trust me. That's 90%, 110. How about the next size? All right. Olive oil. This is the AI overview on Google. Olive oil may contribute to better brain health and potentially reduce the risk of dementia. Studies suggest that olive oil can improve cognitive function, protect against cognitive decline, and even help in the management of dementia. The beneficial effects are often attributed to the antioxidants, particularly polyphenols in olive oil, which can help reduce oxidative stress and inflammation of the brain. Go no. And I'm just going to read you the titles of some of the things. Just a half tablespoon a day of this pantry staple could, well, you know what I'm going to be having after class, dementia. Well, that didn't come out right, but I'm going to go for daily dose of olive oil linked to better brain health. Opting for olive oil could boost brain health. Auburn researcher finds olive oil to improve brain health. Harvard. This is the old days when they used to have money. This popular food ingredient could boost. Tell me what could boost your brain health? How a doctor eats it every day. Okay, and so on and so forth. Opting for olive oil could boost, well, you get the idea. I'm off to the olive oil right after class. And I'm bringing this out to show you once again, it amazes me, though it doesn't actually shock me, how 2,000-year-old Bible, they knew stuff that when we're being told that Yoav, like 1,500 years ago, whatever, 2,000 years ago, is running to the center of olive oil to get a smart woman to go to King David. He knew, because everyone else knew, olive oil increases brain health. And is that an old wives' tale? And I was curious, does modern science say that? And go look. I'm going for the olive oil. I knew that it's good for cholesterol. It's a monounsaturated fat. I really didn't know about this brain stuff till now. So I'm going for the olive oil. Okay, so we go back to Radak. So Radak wants to know, why did Yoav go to so much trouble to find a brilliant olive-oiled woman if he was going to put the words into her mouth anyway? He's going to Tekoa to tell her, I need you to go to the palace, talk to the king, tell him this parable. If he's giving her the whole story, why not pull it from somewhere else? Why look for someone, Dafka, specifically so smart that she's been olive oiled? Amru, imhu sidira tamashal b'fiha. In other words, if he was, the word Seder is arrangement. You arrange things in order, 14 steps at the Seder at Pesach. A Sidur is arranged prayers. If he was going to arrange Siddur and Amashal b'fiha, the parable in her mouth, excuse me, Mahayat Sarich Leisha Chachma. Why did he need such a smart lady? Lefi, the answer is, okay, he's going to put the parable in her mouth, tell her what to say, but he needs someone smart enough to know how to answer. When David retorts, she has to know how to come back, and that's where you need the olive oil. Lefi shetedah lahashiv b'chachma, that she should know how to respond in wisdom. Lema she'amar lahamelech, to whatever the king will say. Ki Yoav lo haya yodeh ma'aneh hamelech. Yoav wasn't sure what the king would answer. If he knew with certainty how the king would respond upon hearing the parable, he would not have needed a lady from Tekoa. He could have told her, the king's going to say this, and you say that. She'asim b'fiha kol dvarim. He would put into her mouth everything. Ela kolal hadvarim sider la. So instead, he went to find a brilliant lady, namely some lady from Tekoa, and he told her klal hadvarim, the general sense of what to say, the general story of Yesh Lefaresh Gamkein, and we can add furthermore, ki hu siper la hama'aseh, v'takna hamashal, that he probably gave her the sense of the overall story, and he left it to her to find the right words. Going further with Radak, talking about now how the woman comes to the king. Lefi shachar kain amar, v'tomer ha'ishia amel. So instead of reading all of it, I told you this last week also, but with time running out, she next had to be smart enough to know how to get in. They had bouncers at the palace, keeping people from getting in and bothering the king. Even when the king held open court for people to come with their petitions and seek relief and justice from the king, not everybody got in. There were bouncers who first had to assess, is this someone worthy, smart enough, normal enough, dressed properly, a serious enough question to let him in to talk to the king? And part of the smartness that she needed to have, this Isha HaTekoit, the Tekoan lady, was how to know how to get in there past the bouncer. Ushanich Nisa Amra Hoshia HaMelech Kederach HaTzoakim. When she got there, she started screaming, Hoshia HaMelech, God save the king, God save the king. Kederach HaTzoakim, like screaming it. And it was her strategy. Sure, the bouncers might have said, she's nuts. She's just off the rails. But she was counting on that they would see a lady, which is so unusual. Women do not come to the king when he's holding court. Men get in. Women, it's not the year 2025, 5785. It was a time and place that a woman stayed in her house, in her hamlet. Women did not come out. They weren't educated. I've talked about it in the past. They didn't get the education. They weren't public figures. They didn't walk in the public streets except maybe to buy food at a bakery. And for her to stand there, she was unique. And the way she was yelling, God save the king, and she obviously had been in mourning with red eyes, crying, dressed like a mourner, and it got her past the bouncer. And so we have here, as we're winding down again, just a few more moments, Malbim, Malach bezeh nichlal gam meshila madua bati v'lo ba'ala ukrovel bonah. What I just said. The king says in verse 5, come on, don't do that to me. Malach, what? What do you want? Ma, what? Lach, what's bothering you? What troubles you? What with you? What's with you? And Malbim explains, he's basically asking, Malach, b'zenichlal, gam hashila. In other words, asking furthermore also the question, Madua bat he, why did ba is to come, bat is female, he is she, why did she come, Madua bat he, velo bala, and not her husband, okroveha, or her male relative, obaneha, or her sons, ki ein derech nashim, because it is not the way of women, lavo lemishpat, to come for judgment. Va'alzeh heshiva, aval she'i afshar shevo bala, so anticipating that, and then responding to the king, what's with you? She was ready for that. It's got to be I and not a male, because they're all dead. She afshar shevo bala, it's impossible for my husband to come, ki he almana, because she's a widow, v'lo baneha, and not my sons, because one was just killed and the other one is on the run. Shehunidach mimkomo, because he's fled from where he normally is. V'lo mishpachta she'aleim titzak, and my family is not going to come to you asking you to pardon my son who killed, because they want to kill him. They don't want him. They don't want him pardoned. And furthermore, she's saying that I'm just a woman of bad luck. Mazalara. On the one hand, we don't believe in mazel, but there's an element of mazel. Mazel means luck. Mazel tov means good luck. Ironically, it's misused as an expression when someone's actually saying congratulations. So when someone's saying congratulations, say mazel tov, which actually means good luck. That became the expression for good luck, because you're kind of saying, when you say mazel tov, you're saying you have good luck. You had good luck. Just got married. You had good luck. Mazel tov. Congratulations. I just won the lottery. Mazel tov. You had good luck. So there is an element of luck. Now, we don't believe in luck. In other words, we don't believe when something good happens, boy, I have all the luck, or he has all the luck. We believe everything is from the hand of God. But we believe that God smiles on certain people at certain moments, and the English word and Hebrew word that best conveys it, when we don't know the reason. Why did God smile on this person at this moment to win the lottery? We don't know. It was just mazel. It was his luck. And it could be mazel ra. And luck, sometimes, Perek Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, teaches there are moments in time when God smiles on someone for no discernible reason. They're just given luck. They're just given a good thing. The last thing, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll break. I've been referring to how someone who kills by accident and otherwise is being pursued by the Goel Adam, the Redeemer of the blood, is able to save his life. We talked about it much more last week, but it still applies here, has to run to a city of refuge. And if you get to the city, if you're not in the city of refuge, but you've killed someone accidentally, then the Redeemers of the blood, the Goalei Adam, are allowed to kill you without warning, and they face no prosecution. But if you make it into the city of refuge, the Ir Miklat, they then may not hurt you or touch you. But you must stay in the Ir Miklat, the city of refuge, until the death of the Kohen Gadol, the high Kohen, at which time everybody who's there in one of the cities is permitted to leave safe and may not be hurt. Anybody who attacks them themselves will be prosecuted. So I mentioned it, I described it, I wanted you just to see it. I told you that by God's Torah command, there are 3 cities of refuge west of the river and lakes. Again, the Sea of Galilee, Lake of Kinneret, that's this, Jordan River, and then down there, And then on the other, the Dead Sea, Yam HaMelech. And then on the other side, so that's the so-called West Bank, and then namely Samaria and Judea. And then on the east, that was Israel too. Both sides of the Jordan. The Jordan has two sides, and both sides belong to us. And on the east, Moshe Rabbeinu actually was buried in the land of Israel. We always teach everybody and ourselves that Moshe was punished and was not allowed to enter the land of Israel. Actually, he did. He was buried in Mount Nebo. He wasn't allowed to enter the western half of Israel, but he actually did enter Israel. And so there are three cities: Golan, Ramot Gilad, and Bezer were the Ari Miklat. And you'll notice there's one up north, one kind of in the middle, and one kind of south, so that people could get to it. If all three would be up north and someone committed an accidental killing here, it would be a big schlep to get there and might not get there in time. Likewise, on the other side, there was Kadesh, Shechem, and Hebron. And of course, Shechem and Hebron are particularly famous. So we're going to kind of wrap it up now in respect for the time. And God willing, see you next Tuesday to continue with more of